The Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League is in Terre Haute, Indiana for the Shy Diesel Extravaganza. And today, the massive Pro Stock diesel truck class is throwing down for their penultimate round of the season. With almost 30 total trucks in the field and the current top 5 all in play for the championship, these last 2 hooks will be absolutely season-defining. The current points leader, Brad Ingram, piloting the Shy diesel truck, holds the top spot by a mere 4 points. And this weekend, he finds himself at the Shy signature home event with an opportunity to claim his championship. The Shy Diesel Extravaganza starts now. Welcome to Terre Haute, Indiana with the Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League. This is the super clean Shy Diesel Extravaganza presented by Lucas Oil Products. Ken Stout and Leslie Mears here to call the action for you as we're covering our Pro Stock diesel trucks.
And it's so exciting to see so many diesel trucks in one place here at the Shy Diesel Extravaganza. And man, has it really evolved since that first event back in 1997. And so if there is a diesel truck class that you want to see in competition, you will find it here, as well as diesel drags during the day. And so it's just an awesome event for all the diesel enthusiasts around the country to come check out.
Huge event, no doubt about it, and very knowledgeable fans as well. So we'll kick off this category with Ivan Harville and the truck called Mayhem. Wow, some big, violent hops in the middle of that hook right there. I'm really surprised something didn't break. It just really stresses that system every time that thing lands. 304 even is the mark.
You know, I think the big difference for him here is that the hops really started to happen for him after the 100-foot mark. And so if it would have been before that mark, he could have backed out of the throttle, pulled back to the starting line, and gave it another go of it. But since he was past that, as a veteran, he just decided to power through it. Looks like he pumped the brakes there a little bit on the throttle, backed out of it just a little bit to try to smooth it out, and then got back in.
Here's a look at the pulling order for the Pro Stock diesel trucks, and once again a very large class here, a very, very competitive category as well.
And so these are guys that you're seeing that run on the Silver Series with the Pro Pulling League, and that's mostly a Midwest tour. And then a lot of guys from the Champion Seeds Western Series, and then you've got guys from the East Coast. And typically, those guys that come from our East Coast Tractor Pulling Series, which is a regional body under the Pro Pulling umbrella, have a lot of success here.
One of the guys that will certainly have a shot at this win, despite the large truck count, will be Brad Ingram here inside the Shy Diesel. Man, that thing looks like a locomotive sailing down through there, and that black coal smoke just rolling out over the hood. 320.19 is a big number.
Yeah, and this is a huge hook for him because the season will end for the Pro Stock diesel trucks here at Terre Haute. And not only does he have the pressure of representing Shy Diesel, but he's also a little bit behind the 8 ball this weekend. And so he's looking to try to catch up with Matt Penn. He's in the battle for the points with him this weekend. And so getting it done out there, going 320, definitely puts the mark where he needs to be. And, you know, that's kind of the cool thing about pulling is, you know, a lot of the guys say that you can only judge your effort by the conditions on the track, you know, the weather conditions and how you pulled at that particular time of day. You know, you kind of can't compare yourself to the other guys throughout the night. And I think he did the best he could at this point.
Look at how close this is at the top as we take a look at the points. Cross-wired right there within a couple of positions, as is Matt Penn and the Penn Farms, the Mayhem truck, which of course kicked off this event. I mean, it is tight at the top.
So it'll be interesting to see how things shake out here throughout the course of the night, because as we saw earlier in that lineup, Matt Penn is a little bit farther down, and so is Keith Witt in our lineup.
And these are the last two hooks of the season to chase points. Both of them happen here at Terre Haute. This is night one. Blue Addiction is next. Oh! Violent mechanical breakage right there for Bram Coolmees and the Blue Addiction. That's a problem.
Yeah, and you can see the parts on the ground there. Not something you see very often with these pro stock diesel trucks. And so they do have a lot of aftermarket parts. It's kind of like the next step down below our super stock diesel trucks. And so lots of aftermarket parts to try to strengthen everything up. And so it looks like it's going to be something beyond just maybe a tie rod out there holding those front tires together. And so unfortunately for him, he's going to have a lot of work to do before coming back to the track tomorrow.
A very prestigious hook here at Terre Haute when you come out for the Shy Diesel Extravaganza. So let's take a look at some of the previous winners.
You know, it's interesting to see several names dominating the track early on. It was John Baer in the Grin and Barrett machine before he moved up to that super stock diesel truck class. Of course, we see the Hazleys there represented with the off constantly machine, the boosted Outlaw in there. James Barter, one of those East Coast tractor pullers that I was talking about. And then just 1 year ago, a class jumper, Jeff Hostler, taking the win with Flirting with Disaster.
Tough players out here winning this huge hook as we take a look at Brent Meyer coming up next and the Lincoln Diesel Specialty Back Machine. And one of the GMCs out here trying to get it done. 3:23 and 81. We have a brand new leader.
And man, just a silky smooth pass there. And you can see, takes that same line in the middle of the track, but powers through that section that has given others trouble so far. And it's all about that ground speed out there and getting that up earlier. Of course, you see a little bit of splash there from the intercooler out front. It is a little bit warm out here, so some of that ice and water going to slush around in the weight box out front where the intercooler is located. But just look how smooth here at the end as he finishes. That box topping off, really putting a lot of pressure on those rear tires and helping him dig in and extend that distance out.
Great looking truck and an impressive hook here as well. So we're off and running inside of the Pro Stock Diesel Truck category. Stay with us. A lot of pulling action is yet to come.
The Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League is brought to you by General Tire, anywhere is possible. K&N, superior airflow, superior performance. And by Lucas Oil, made in America, sold to the world.
We welcome you back to the Super Clean Shy Diesel Extravaganza presented by Lucas Oil. We're in Terre Haute, Indiana at the action track about an hour west of Indianapolis. Cummins Doubt coming up here next, driven by Daniel Whalen. And Dan's going to miss it here by a little bit today. 3:06 and 60 is the final mark for him.
You know, it's really interesting in this category. You know, they do have a lot of liberties with the things that they can do to try to help the truck hook up harder to the track. And, you know, one of those things is going to be this bar tire. And so it's really going to be about adjusting that tire pressure, especially on the rear tires here. And so they're going to pay attention to see how the track develops. If it starts to get a little bit harder over time, which a dirt track can just because of the composition of it and the clay in it, then we're gonna see him maybe let a little air out of those tires, try to get a little bit wider footprint once that box tops off and weighs in.
Nathan Vay coming up here next, driving the Jumpin' Jack Flash, and Leslie spoke to him earlier.
So it's season 2 here for Nathan Vag, and what did you learn in your first year pulling that's been able to help you out here in year 2?
Last year the main thing was just learning the simple things like backing up the sled, learning how to launch pro stock diesel truck. That's the first thing I've ever driven. like I said, driving off the end of the track, just, you know, the main things, the things you got to have down to be out here with these guys. And I think learning all that and getting a good handle on it brought us to where we are today.
So what things are you concentrating on this year that you've got kind of some of the simple things out of the way?
Yeah, this year we kind of dove into some more of the technicalities, like picking a line out in the track, choosing a better gear, you know, depending on what your track conditions are like. That kind of stuff, reading more of the information side of the sport, I guess.
Do you feel like you're a better driver this year also?
Maybe a little. We adjusted our clutch big time over the winter, and I'm learning how to slip it a little bit more, and that definitely helps out there instead of just burning all the power right off the line. So I'd say that's the main thing that I've picked up on is, you know, not just dumping it and going, but kind of let it crawl out there and then take off, you know, hook up to the dirt and all that. So.
You know, and he makes a great point about just kind of doing the little things, because with pulling, it's way different than other sports where there is no practice. You don't get to go out to your local pulling track and make some practice laps out there. You do it all in competition.
And Nathan will end up with a distance of 289.38.
You know, and that's kind of interesting coming from this team here. You know, that's a little short for them because they've had a pretty successful season, you know, so far, you know, in the top 5 in points, I believe. And, you know, something else is that this team is really committed to kind of pulling this year. And, you know, they've kind of traveled all over. They've gone to the East Coast. They've traveled up into Ohio and pulled with the Ohio State tractor pullers some up there. Really anywhere where they could gain some experience on the track, that's where they've decided to go, just to try to make themselves a little bit better. Really cool to see the father and son committed like that.
Ryan Funk coming up here next, and the name of the truck, having a little fun with this one, is the Funkin' Groovin'. And again, that thing hopping violently down there. First time we've seen him in the Silver Series Tour so far this year, 3:03 and 58.
It's really interesting, these guys staying in that line in the middle, and looks like he takes a big unwanted turn to the right-hand side of the track at the very beginning, which makes him have to steer away from that line towards the end. And oh, he just barely missed going out of bounds there.
So close, man. He was driving that thing for sure. Fun to watch these guys do what they do, man, especially when the track throws them a bit of a curveball, which it certainly seems to be happening here tonight. Next up, the name of the truck is Migraine, as Trent Van Wiesen will come up here next out of Stockton, Illinois.
You know, it really takes a lot of awareness to not go out of bounds like he did on that last pass, because if you see how wide set those front tires are, it's not like driving your car where you got an idea where that tire is going to be. These guys are just taking a guess at it over there.
And while he's not anywhere near the top 2 trucks in the category, the 306 and 19 will currently put him inside of the top 5 for now.
And it's interesting that we got these 2 contenders out there past 320, and no one else has even really come close to those marks out there. So it's interesting to see if maybe they got kind of those magical passes out there, like maybe they found something early on in the track and they took the good spot on the good dirt out there. However, we are very, very early in the class, and so the sun is still out. I'm sure there's some more moisture to come up out of this dirt to give it a little bit more grip. But there are many, many contenders out there. Brent Meyer holds the lead for now, but he's going to have to watch those bullets come at him if he tries to hold on.
We're back here in Terre Haute, Indiana, and there's a look at one of the legends of all time of the NBA, and Larry Bird, of course, such a historic name, played for the Celtics for many, many years, came back and was GM for the Indiana Pacers for a number of years.
And of course, Terre Haute, a very, very special place for Larry Bird because he got his start with the Sycamores. And that, of course, created the historic matchup between Larry Bird and Magic Johnson in that championship game. And of course, that matchup, you know, stood the test of time there and continued on in the NBA.
Hard to believe it was some 40 years ago. Wow. This is the Super Clean Shide Diesel Extravaganza presented by Lucas Oil as we continue on here with our Pro Stock diesel trucks. This is Carl Butler. And Carl Butler will end up with a distance of 318.01, a really solid effort here to jump up into the top three.
Yeah, super silky smooth run for him, and the big difference is going to be sled placement for him. And, you know, everybody else was running kind of in the center of the track, and we saw them have issues with those hops early on and just really getting the truck out of balance and unloaded from the track. And what he does is he just moves another tire width to the right-hand side of the track, and that makes all the difference. And it actually is quite a big distance towards that side, because if you check out just the great big footprint that these guys have with those front tires offset here, if he can keep contact on all four corners consistently throughout the course of that run, it makes a huge difference. Very, very smooth.
Great looking Dodge too, love the colors. The ranch hand coming out here and making their presence known as we go to our next Dodge. This one, all white. Greg Henney and the truck called Wound Tight. And Greg with a solid effort as well as he gets out of the throttle, and you hear that turbo chirp as it spools down. 3:10 and 14 is good enough for fourth place.
Yeah, and I suspect that we're going to see a lot of guys ride that right sideline over there, knowing that that's where the best passes as of late have been. And, you know, it's just really been cool, too, to see this class evolve over the last several years. You know, they've made some changes to the drivetrain to make it a lot more stable in this class. They went from DOT tires to cut tires. That's been a huge change for the guys over the last 3 years. And, of course, all the changes that they can make to the suspension. You know, they still are limited to 7,800 pounds, and they have to have that OEM chassis, but they can run, you know, a tube chassis as well, as long as it meets those OEM specs. And so that makes a difference for these guys here.
Matt Penn coming up here next in the truck called Penn Farms, and we're going to give you a flashback here to Lyons where he stood on top of the box.
Yeah, and this was probably one of the trickier tracks this season. You can see throwing a ton of dirt back towards the sled. It was really wet for these guys. Matt making the right adjustments to the Penn Farms machine to really dig into that dirt, bury the truck at the end, and put himself on top of the box.
And also earned 50 points just one hook ago as he had a great outing, trying to close that gap on our leaders. Man, and the hops just so violent that he finally was forced to get out of the throttle. That one was going to end really bad if he stayed in it. What a tough night here for Matt Penn. That is not what he needed, for sure, in terms of this points hunt.
Man, I was going to say tough is an understatement for him. You know, he was third in the points, a contender, a former class champion, and I've never seen his truck react like that on the track. And so I wonder if maybe he was just a little bit too aggressive off the line, and it got such a big bite that it kind of launched him forward a little bit. But it's crazy to see that, because usually we see all four corners on the ground here with these guys and not the jumping around like that.
There comes Rodney Tarr and the Twisted Metal Machine. Last three hooks for him is all he has made on the points tour, and they have all three been solid up on the podium. And the old school Dodge is going to turn in a good number here, 313 and 87. That's good enough to jump up into fourth place.
Yeah, he's quite a character, and so it's always interesting to see not only what he does on the track, but what kind of shenanigans he's got going on in the pits as well. But he decides to take his line just a little bit left of center, going back to that road that seems to be built there in the center of the track. It's kind of consistent. Everybody's kind of relying on it out there kind of as their point for the sled setting. But here at Terre Haute, the super stock diesel trucks have a lot of success on the left sideline, so I'm interested to see if anybody's going to go down there.
Plenty of trucks yet to come. We'll be right back to Terre Haute. Making some black smoke here at the Super Clean Shy Diesel Extravaganza presented by Lucas Oil Products. We saw Brent Meyer earlier in the category, and he's your current leader at 323.81 with a truck called Lincoln Diesel Specialties. This is the same name with a number 2 after it. Let's see what he's got. Beautiful Dodge, and he turns in a good number here, but not enough to surpass his leading mark. He'll jump up into 4th place with this truck at 316 and 15.
Yeah, and it's so cool to see him throwing it back to the more square-bodied Dodges. You know, normally we see the bodies on these Dodge trucks ranging, 96 to kind of early 2000s when Dodge went to that change, and it was a little bit more angular, a little bit curvy, but, maybe I'm just being a little sentimental here because these are the type of trucks I grew up with, too, and so it's good to see him out here on the pulling track.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, gorgeous truck.
Yeah, show quality on the track, outside, inside also. I think it's these hops at the very end, though, that detract from his distance just a little bit as he's trying to keep that sled moving at the very end.
Pretty cool to see somebody come out here with that lead, knowing what it's going to take and not able to get back there. It just goes to show you how tough it is, and every truck is just a little bit different. As James Barter's coming up here next with the Barter Turbo Service Machine. Another great looking ride.
Yeah, we've got to remember he's a 2-time former champ here at the Shy Diesel Extravaganza.
Brand new Ford out there, and he'll end up at 307 and 36.
Yeah, the cross-tracking really hurting him, but it does show the other pullers that there is some good dirt down there on that left side. And as I mentioned earlier, that's where the super stock diesel trucks always run. They have a lot of success over there, but they do have a little bit more horsepower than these pro stock diesel trucks. And of course, those extra turbos make a big difference here. In this category, they can only run a single 3.6 smooth bore turbocharger. And so that's going to dramatically decrease their horsepower in comparison with those super stock diesel trucks.
Tug Toy is the name of the next Dodge coming up here out of Villa Grove, Illinois, and behind the wheel is Linda Burke. And unfortunately, well short of where she'll need to end up tonight to be a competitor here for the win, 284 and 42.
But compared to the other competitors in the group, Linda and her husband Dennis, who campaigned the truck, just relative or newcomers to the world of truck and tractor pulling in only their 2nd or 3rd season. Longtime friends of the late John and Brenda Muma, and kind of helped them get their start into pulling. And so glad to have them out here, newcomers in the group, and it's always cool to see new faces out here on the track as well.
Yeah, in a tough category, as we talked about before, with so many trucks. Very respectable effort here to come out and get it done as we take a look at John Manns and the Crazy X. Wow, and right down on it, man. Turns in a good number at 312 and 63.
His whole shot was very, very interesting because you could watch the smoke change and you could tell when he really decided to get after it. And so he's just kind of feathering a little bit. And right there, when you see that smoke clean up, go straight black, it's really shooting up out of the pipe out there, showing that he's moving a lot of good air to mix with that fuel to create that horsepower out there. And that's what it's going to take for these guys. You know, they've got to put it together top to bottom and figure out where they can get the best effort out of the use of their throttle out there.
Just missed the top 5 with that effort. Well, there's a look at your top 3. We'll be back with more action from Terre Haute.
The Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League is brought to you by Geico, saving people money on more than just car insurance. Super Clean, not just clean, super clean. And by Optima Batteries, the ultimate power source.
This is Terre Haute, Indiana, the crossroads of America. U.S. Highway 40, the old national road which opened the West for settlement, and U.S. Highway 41 has been here forever and ever and ever.
You know, it really stretches across. You know, I grew up in Ohio, and Route 40 was a huge part of our history over there, and Zane's Trace, and the opportunity for exploration. And that's what's happening here today, exploration in the diesel truck category.
The fans packing in the stands here at the Super Clean Shy Diesel Extravaganza, presented by Lucas Oil Products, as Cole Faber is the next truck to hook here, called the Rumor. And courtesy of General Tire, we're going to give you a flashback on how this Chevy did earlier this year. Let's go back to Goshen. It is round 7.
And man, was this a tough hook for him. Pulled early in the class and then came back as the last truck of the night to power through and pick up the big win here. Just a huge victory for him at a tricky track there in Goshen, Indiana.
Slowly building a fire here. Wow, very methodical, and we know it's a really good truck, but boy, he missed it here tonight at 3:01 and 98.
Yeah, and I think that methodical method off the line is not going to work here on the track at Terre Haute, unfortunately for him, that you're going to have to get that ground speed up really, really early, get that sled moving fast, because as that fast diesel system box tops off, it's really going to put the brakes on you. And so you've got to have amazing ground speed if you're going to continue out there and be a contender. Hey, our leader's out there at 323, almost 324 feet. Which is just crazy. And so it's a very, very long pull for these guys.
Next driver coming up here is Andrew Grove, and Leslie had a chance to spend some time with him earlier today.
Andrew Grove, in bad timing, last year picked up a podium and a 5th place finish here at the Shy Diesel Extravaganza, which is very hard to do. So what is it about having that early hook here last year for you that led to so much success for you on the track?
We just hit it on the setup, and our whole crew here, everybody from the East Coast, we all worked together and just worked out. Reading the tracks has a lot to do with it. Your position, usually later hooks better, but being an early hook, we stuck it out there. I think at the time when I pulled, I put 10 feet on the previous leader and held it the whole way to the end of the last 2 trucks. And we hit the setup right, I ended up driving it right, and it just worked, so.
Well, what about this year, though? You're kind of in the middle of the pack, but you've still got your crew here. And like you said, the East Coast dominated. So how do you feel about the track how it's coming together today and your chances?
It looks pretty good out there right now. We have a good group of guys, and we all work together, and we have some strong running trucks. So if we don't mess up driving and pick a good line to run, I think we'll sit all right tonight. So we'll see what happens.
And one of those East Coast trucks is the Ranch Hand, which we know is right there at 3rd place so far, and he is the first of the 3 East Coast trucks here to run right in a row. So Andrew Grove will have a lot of info to share with the group.
Oh! Well, he can share what not to do there as the back of that thing hopped completely off the ground. And we've seen this track bite a couple of guys. Man, that setup's so critical here tonight.
when it looks like almost the same thing that we saw happen to the Penn Farms truck, and it's almost in the exact same line where Matt Penn was running as well. And so, man, that rear end just so light on the starting line because they're using the weight of the sled to push down those rear tires. When it starts to hop like that within the first 100 feet, there's no weight to keep it on the ground. And so that's what happened. It unloaded those rear tires with those big bounces because it's so light back there.
Living on the Edge is the name of the truck that Carl Enkelwitz Jr. will be driving. Boy, nice and smooth all the way down through there. You'd never know any of the other trucks even hopped there at the beginning versus that run. 3:06 and 80 is the mark.
And of course, he was able to rely on some information there from Andrew Grove working together in the group. And you can see he steers it just a little bit towards that right sideline to avoid that bad place in the track out there that has given everyone fits. And so he just drives right around it and digs into the end. But I think because he did make that turn just a little bit, that's what hurts him on the top end with his distance as well, making that kind of angle to the side and then bringing it back around.
Up next, Chapter 11, and the driver is Norman Newswanger. Boy, great looking forward right there. Nice and clean. And the Chapter 11 truck also suffering from some of those bounces rolling down through there. Will end up a bit short at 302.08.
Yeah, and really just powers through it well, but I wonder if maybe this isn't a situation where other guys are going to see this, and what I talked about earlier, maybe change some of the air pressure in those rear tires, and so take a little bit out, give it a bigger footprint, a little bit more flexibility there to kind of hook up to the track so that you don't bounce that much, because it does seem to be a little bit harder than they anticipated, and so it's not giving them the grip that they would normally have with their standard air pressure settings.
We're going to take a quick break here. We still have a handful of trucks yet to go inside of this Pro Stock category. This one is far from over. Things are about to get out of hand here at the Super Clean Chai Diesel Extravaganza, presented by Lucas Oil Products. That's the name of the next truck, with Greg Strandley doing the driving. Leslie had a chance to speak with Greg a little bit earlier in the day as he comes out of Stoughton, Wisconsin, and hoping for a good night here.
Big changes this year as the out-of-hand truck jumps from the limited pro diesel truck class into the pro stock class. And so, Greg, what's been the biggest change for you at jumping classes?
We switched from the mechanical Duramax over to the Scheid Cummins, and the power level, along with the DOT tires versus the cut tires now, were typically with the Cummins or the Duramax, we had to come out pretty much wide open with the 3.0, and then the 3.6, you kind of got to ease into it out of the line. And as you get moving, then you can kind of go full tilt with it. It's been a little bit of a struggle with us trying to get used to the driving and the tires.
You've also made some adjustments to the suspension, which you had limited adjustments you could make in that other class. So how has that been different for you and helped you hook up a little harder?
Adjusting the way the suspension reacts off the stops. We've been working with Randy up at Performance Pros, and he's been assisting us in setting up the chassis and the front suspension. It's been a big help.
So learning how to drive that truck all over again after making that change, and pretty impressive to hear the power difference going from just a 3.0 turbo to that 3.6 smoothbore, as this thing's putting out some steam for sure. Not quite enough steam to be a player here tonight, though. 298 and 56 is the mark.
Well, this answers the big question for a lot of the guys left back there in the staging lanes, because he has a real sense of adventure here about this hook going down to that left sideline where no one has pulled yet throughout the class. And so by pulling over there, you know, he's taking a risk. He's not a guy that's really up in the points. You know, he doesn't really have anything to gain by playing it safe. And so coming out here and kind of taking a risk, going to that sideline where no one else has been yet, you know, it's kind of that, you know, hero to zero or zero to hero move that he's got to take. And so the good part is that he spun it in. And it's also good for the guys behind him in those staging lanes, because they know what to expect and know they have to stay kind of center and center right if they're going to get some good traction out there.
And that really clean Chevrolet disconnecting and pulling off out of the way to hand it over to Jeff Hostler. The truck called Flirtin' with Disaster, and he's had some success here in the past.
Yeah, won on Friday night just 1 year ago. The most interesting part about Jeff, though, is that he takes off the DOTs and the 3.0 smoothbore, puts on the 3.6 turbo and the cut tires, and jumps into this class without any other modifications.
And he tries that left side as well and ends up at about the same distance at 300.38.
Yeah, and very unusual for him, because he's actually come to a couple other PPL events here on the Silver Series and fared very, very well, just kind of making those few changes. But, you know, he's still got the OEM chassis out there. He's got the mostly OEM suspension, and so he can't make those changes like the other guys do. And if so, as I mentioned, he just changes tires and changes turbo and takes all those stock parts and comes up here and plays with the Pro Stock diesel trucks.
Continuing on here, just 4 trucks yet to go. This one out of Harbor Beach, Michigan, and Tony Burkhart behind the wheel. Couple of hops in there along the way, and Tony will end up with a distance of 3:02 and 81.
You know, and this hook, just a great example of just how different the Cummins and the Duramax engines are, and even just how they sound coming off the line. You know, that Duramax has more of that kind of bumblebee rumble that we aren't used to hearing out of the Cummins in the category. And so there aren't very many of them. Kudos to him for coming out here, trying something a little bit different, making it work for him on the track.
Take a swing at it anyways. Well, coming up next will be Keith Witt and the cross-wired truck. This is an important hook here in terms of points. He comes in here second in the points, just ahead of the Penn Farms machine by 12 points. The Penn Farms machine, as we saw earlier, really struggling at 2:12 and 10. So Witt needs a good hook here. He could really close that gap, maybe even pass him. And he does a respectable job here at 3:12 and 26. I believe good enough to get him up into the top 6.
Well, with this hook, though, he's very, very cautious on the starting line with that whole shot. And so it takes him a long time, and you see full throttle right there. So like 100 to 150 feet, because he's seen everyone else before him struggle with that stretch of track. And knowing what's on the line here, and knowing he's trying to put himself in a position where he can possibly be a contender for this championship in one day, he was very methodical and safe and did what he had to do.
Solid job for sure, and currently would earn him 4th place points. We'll be right back.
The Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League is brought to you by General Tire, anywhere is possible. Rhino Ag, born to lead. And by Lucas Oil, made in America, sold to the world.
And once again, we welcome you back here to the Super Clean Shy Diesel Extravaganza, presented by Lucas Oil Products. Just 2 trucks yet to go here inside of the Pro Stock category. Just had a very important points hook where Keith Witt did a great job, put 3:12 and 26 on the board. More importantly, that means there's still some good spots out here on this track We'll see if Ryan Sokolowski can find one. All greased up, the name of the truck. And that Dodge Ram sled pulling edition is what it says on the side of it. Ends up at 298 and 91.
And it looks like a little trouble there on the hole shot. You know, trying to square up the truck and the sled right off the starting line, and that can be difficult. We heard Nathan Veg talk about it earlier that, you know, one of the things you got to learn is kind of backing up to the sled and kind of squaring up the truck to the track, and it's one of those things that's not very easy at all. You've got to remember that probably a third of the weight of the truck, the 7,800 pounds, is on that front axle, and so it's very, very hard to steer these trucks and to get them to do exactly what you want them to.
Final truck in the category. It's called High Maintenance. Daniel Mooney doing the driving here. Another Duramax inside of the category.
Yeah, really cool to check out the tread on these tires as he's rolling with something a little bit different. These are DOTs.
Also rocking those dual wheels in the back instead of those lug tires, and ends up at 287 and 28. So that'll wrap things up here with the Pro Stock Diesel category. Once again, just a brutal class as we take a look at the front of that gorgeous Chevrolet called High Maintenance. But it is tough, man, to come out here and win one of these events for sure. Let's go down to the podium and talk to our winner.
So just a silky smooth pass tonight for Brent Meyer as you pick up the huge win here. So what contributed to that smooth pass tonight?
Well, it was just a great line. The truck, I think we hit the air pressure just right, rode the clutch out, and couldn't ask for a smoother pass. Great ground speed. It hooked and planted on the ground just like we wanted.
Yeah, a successful run for you guys. A lot of people behind you to pick up the big win tonight at Shai.
Yeah, without family, friends, a girlfriend, guys back at the shop trying to take and get the trucks together for us. Hazley for the power plant. Just couldn't be possible.
Here's a look at how they ended up. The big dogs up there on top. Brent Meyer really laying one down at 323, followed up by Brad Ingram, your points leader at 320. Carl Butler and Brent Meyer once again. So Meyer up inside of the top 5 with both trucks here tonight, and Rodney Tarr ending up inside of your top 5. Take a look at how big this category is. Some 28 trucks strong here this evening. Tough class for sure. Let's go back down to the podium and talk to Carl Butler.
So it's a great showing tonight for the ranch hand, and this is your first time back, Carl, since you had that detrimental mechanical breakdown. And so what was it tonight that gave you the edge?
Well, tonight I have a great coach, Andy Grove. I got a great crew. We came in totally mechanically ready. Mentally, I was prepared, and the track was great, and everything worked out tonight. So we was ready for tonight, and we tried the best we could, and we got third.
Yeah, definitely doing a great job representing the East Coast tractor pullers, too.
Oh, thank you, yes. And that's, once again, because the crew goes everywhere with me, and Andy coaches me every time I drive. And so far, we had a great year, and just winding down the year and having a great year here, too. So it's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Here's a look at the points with just one hook left on the season. Brad Ingram up top. A solid effort here tonight, finishing up in second. But how about Keith Witt? Came in here in third and closes the gap now. He's just 8 points back, jumped up into second place. Matt Penn was in second, had a tough go tonight, and falls down to fourth. Let's go down and talk to Brad.
It was a super tough, huge class for you tonight, Brad, and you sustained and you did what you had to do to maintain that points lead.
Yeah, we got pretty lucky there. The track, I think, started to kind of go away later, so we fortunate to be early in the class, and the guys here at Shai Diesel have put a lot of effort into getting everything dried up. All the guys at Lucas Oil, of course, the sponsors ARP and Fast, put a good event together here. We need to thank our sponsors, Shai Diesel Service, with all their employees, my family, and our family at home, getting the kids to baseball so we can be here and pull.
Never miss a pull. Go to propulling.com/set reminder to add all of the Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League airings to your personal calendar. Receive a calendar reminder minutes before each event airs.
We always enjoy coming here to the action track in Terre Haute, Indiana for the Shy Diesel Extravaganza. You can keep up with everything that's going on in truck and tractor pulling at propulling.com. We'd love to see you at one of our events. Hope you enjoyed all the great pulling action, all diesel all the time. For Leslie Mears, I'm Ken Stout. Thanks for watching the Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League.